The Witness. In a stable which is almost in the shadow of the new stone church, a man with grey eyes and grey beard, lying amidst the odour of the animals, humbly seeks death as one would seek sleep. The day, faithful to vast and secret laws, is shifting and confusing the shadows inside the poor shelter. Outside are the ploughed fields and a ditch clogged with dead leaves and the tracks of a wolf in the black mud where the forest began. The man sleeps and dreams, forgotten. He is awakened by the bells tolling the Angelus. In the kingdoms of England, the ringing of bells is now one of the customs of the evening. But this man, as a child, has seen the face of Woden, the divine horror and exultation, the crude wooden idol hung with Roman coins and heavy clothing, the sacrificing of horses, dogs, and prisoners. Before dawn he will die, and with him will die, and never return, the last immediate images of these pagan rites. The world will be a little poorer when this Saxon has died. Deeds which populate the dimensions of space, and which reach their end when someone dies, may cause us wonderment. But one thing, or an infinite number of things, dies in every final agony, unless there is a universal memory, as the Theosophists have conjectured. In time there was a day that extinguished the last eyes to see Christ. The battle of Hunin and the love of Helen died with the death of a man. What will die with me when I die? What pathetic or fragile form will the world lose? The voice of Macedonio Fernandez, the image of a red horse in the vacant lot at Serrano and Carcass, a bar of sulphur in the drawer of a mahogany desk? Borges and I. The other one, the one called Borges, is the one things happen to. I walk through the streets of Buenos Aires and stop for a moment, perhaps mechanically now, to look at the arch of an entrance hall and the grilled work on the gate. I know of Borges from the mail and see his name on a list of professors or in a biographical dictionary. I like hourglasses, maps, 18th century topography, the taste of coffee, and the prose of Stevenson. He shares these preferences, but in a vain way that turns them into the attributes of an actor. It would be an exaggeration to say that ours is a hostile relationship. I live, let myself go on living, so that Borges may contrive his literature. And this literature justifies me. It's no effort for me to confess that he has achieved some valid pages, but those pages cannot save me. Perhaps because what is good belongs to no one, not even to him, but rather to the language and to tradition. Besides, I am destined to perish, definitively, and only some instant of myself can survive in him. Little by little I am giving over everything to him, though I am quite aware of his perverse custom of falsifying and magnifying things. Spinoza knew that all things belong to persist in their being. The stone eternally wants to be a stone, and the tiger a tiger. I shall remain in Borges, not in myself, if it is true that I am someone. But I recognize myself less in his books than in many others, or in the laborious strumming of a guitar. Years ago I tried to free myself from him and went from the mythologies of the suburbs to the games with time and infinity. But those games belong to Borges now, and I shall have to imagine other things. Thus my life is a flight, and I lose everything, and everything belongs to oblivion, or to him. I do not know which of us has written this page. Everything and nothing. There was no one in him. Behind his face, which even through the bad paintings of those times resembles no other, and his words, which were copious, fantastic, and stormy, there was only a bit of coldness, a dream dreamt by no one. At first he thought that all people were like him, but the astonishment of a friend to whom he had begun to speak of this emptiness showed him his error, and made him feel always that an individual should not differ in outward appearance. Once he thought that in books he would find a cure for his ill, and thus he learned the small Latin and less Greek a contemporary would speak of. Later, he considered that what he sought might well be found in an elemental right of humanity, and let himself be initiated by Anne Hathaway one long June afternoon. At the age of 20-odd years, he went to London. Instinctively, he had already become proficient in the habit of simulating that he was someone, so that others would not discover his condition as no one. In London he found the profession to which he was predestined, that of the actor, who on a stage plays at being another before a gathering of people who play at taking him for that other person. His histrionic tasks brought him a singular satisfaction, perhaps the first he had ever known. But once the last verse had been acclaimed, and the last dead man withdrawn from the stage, the hated flavor of unreality returned to him. He ceased to be Ferrex or Tamerlane, and became no one again. Thus hounded, he took to imagining other heroes and other tragic fables, and so, while his flesh fulfilled its destiny as flesh in the taverns and brothels of London, the soul that inhabited him was Caesar, who disregards the augur's admonition, and Juliet, who abhors the lark, and Macbeth, who converses on the plain with the witches, who are also fates. No one has ever been so many men as this man, who, like the Egyptian Proteus, could exhaust all the guises of reality. At times he would leave a confession hidden away in some corner of his work, certain that it would not be deciphered. Richard affirms that in his person he plays the part of many, and Iago claims with curious words, "I am not what I am." The fundamental identity of existing, dreaming, and acting inspired famous passages of his. For 20 years he persisted in that controlled hallucination, but one morning he was suddenly gripped by the tedium and the terror of being so many kings who die by the sword, and so many suffering lovers who converge, diverge, and melodiously expire. That very day he arranged to sell his theatre. Within a week he had returned to his native village, where he recovered the trees and rivers of his childhood, and did not relate them to the others his muse had celebrated, illustrious with mythological allusions and Latin terms. He had to be someone. He was a retired impresario who had made his fortune and concerned himself with loans, lawsuits, and petty usury. It was in this character that he dictated the arid will and testament known to us, from which he deliberately excluded all traces of pathos or literature. His friends from London would visit his retreat, and for them he would take up again his role as poet. History adds that before or after dying he found himself in the presence of God and told him, "I, who have been so many men in vain, want to be one and myself." The voice of the Lord answered from a whirlwind, "Neither am I anyone. I have dreamt the world as you dreamt your work, my Shakespeare, and among the forms in my dream are you, who like myself are many and no one."